Good morning and welcome to the Outdoor Cameraman Experience presented by Latendresse Media Collective, hosted by Jake Latendresse and myself, Jess DeLorenzo. We have a pretty good show today for our second episode. We have a guest coming on that's super exciting. I think that we will start off by talking about some of our personal favorites, our own camera gear. And then shortly after, we're going to dive right into it with our guest, Shannon Nardi. So
Good morning, Jess. How are
Good
you
morning,
doing?
Jake. I'm good.
You've been out
Good.
chasing turkeys.
Yeah, I had a pretty good weekend.
So you harvested a turkey opening day, and then another one yesterday, and then you went out with George this morning.
Yeah, I had pretty much the best opening weekend you can ask for. There it is. Oh, there's Shannon too.
Hi, Shannon.
I got to go out on opening day and got a bird right away around 10 o'clock in the morning, which was awesome. It was a nice public land mountain bird. And then I went out again on Monday morning because we can't hunt on Sunday here, and was able to get one with my bow. So this is the first time I ever tagged anything on opening day and tagged out the second day. So I'm pretty excited.
Well, good for you. The pictures were beautiful. I saw them on Instagram and Facebook yesterday, and the pictures were beautiful. I know George, I'm assuming George took those photos. They turned out really, really well.
Yeah. George is also an outdoor cameraman.
He is. He's part of our team. He, in fact, speaking of those photos, what camera was George using?
George shoots 5D3, I believe.
And should we just go ahead and get into the meat of the program and start talking about? We were going to start today's show with a short segment on gear, and we were going to talk about our favorite camera bodies and lenses that Jess and I use. So why don't we just go ahead and get into that? Then we can get into the interview with Shannon after that. How's that sound?
It sounds good to me.
You want to go first?
Sure. Let me pull up my stuff here. So my camera just happens to be over here. Let me see if I can grab it.
We both shoot Canon, so for all the viewers out there that might be hoping to see some Sonys or Nikons, your SOL, but that's not because we don't approve. We just happen to shoot Canon, and we'll probably get into that a little bit while we're talking about these cameras and lenses. Why don't you go ahead?
So this is my workhorse. This is the Canon 5D4. I got this body last year. Before that, I was shooting a 5D3 and a 6D and pretty much every sequential camera before that. This one, I just love everything about it. One of my favorite features, being outdoors all the time, is the Wi-Fi capability. So if I need to send a client a photo right away, I can hook right up to the camera. I can edit on my phone and send it right over. It's a little bit lighter, I think, than the 5D3. And the difference in editing the photos too on here between the 3 and the 4, there's a big difference for me. So I really come to enjoy being able to fine tune things with this newer body.
Yeah, I think that has become my favorite camera as well. Let me see what I've got here. This is my workhorse. This is the collar's turned up, but this is the Canon 5D Mark IV, the same as Jess's. This is the Canon 600 millimeter prime f4. This is by far my favorite lens. I use it all the time. It's very heavy, cumbersome, expensive, and yet it's very tough and durable, but it's just something I love to shoot. I can get in on, using that lens, I can get in on my subjects pretty tight, or I can shoot long distance. Of course, I shoot a lot of sheep hunts and mountain hunts, so I like to carry that camera, even though it's heavy and probably not the most practical thing. It helps me a lot, shooting long distances. My other camera is the Canon 1DX Mark II, and this is the difference between this camera and that camera. Is this camera, in my opinion, is better for video. It shoots high frame rates, up to 16 frames per second in burst mode, so I can shoot birds and fast moving activities with this really well. but the sensors, I think a 22 megapixel sensor, whereas the 5D Mark IV is I think a 32 megapixel sensor. And the sharpness on the images on the still photos on the 5D Mark IV are way superior to this camera. However, this is capable of shooting 120 frames per second and 1080, 4K video. I never have any dropouts or stalls on the video read and write, because this thing takes a CFast card, which is a little bit faster than your standard compact flash. So, as I balance the two, I find the 5D Mark IV to be my go-to still camera, and the 1DX Mark II to be my video camera in the DSLR format.
I remember the first time, one of the first times we did a project together. Well, not the first time, but I had experience using your 1DX, and I was not prepared for the shutter speed on that thing, and I think I probably took an extra 3,000 photos to go through. That thing is like a machine gun, but especially shooting outside or wildlife, I mean, you can catch some really unique moments that I think that just your human reaction isn't capable of.
Yeah, I think even, eyes blinking when you have groups of people that you're trying to photograph, and one person's always got their eyes closed because they blink when you snap the shutter. When you shoot in burst mode, I like to use that in active, during high speed activities, whether it's birds or sports or whatever.
Yeah.
And I also like to use it in group photos because I can burst through a sequence of shots, and say there's, I get 10 shots in a second, and there's 30 people in the group photo. Oftentimes I have better luck catching the entire photo where everyone's got their eyes open if I just burst through it. So that's how I utilize it.
Nice. Well, in my what I mean when I get that, I have to Photoshop people's heads from different photos into the photo.
So you can't really do that with animals.
Right. There was what was I about to say? Your audio went fuzzy, so I don't know what happened there, but there was now it's back to normal. But one of the things we should probably touch on and then get over to the interview with Shannon is, why do we shoot Canon? Why do you shoot Canon?
I shoot Canon because I've started off shooting Canon. I'm really comfortable with it. I'm kind of along the motto of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I've always just been really comfortable with their interface. I've experimented a little bit back and forth with Nikons, and I just find them to be a little bit more cumbersome when you're trying to get through menus and use settings and things like that. So I'm always, it's like Pepsi Coke. I've just always shot a Canon. I don't really have any need or desire to switch. I'm not saying that might not ever happen in the future, but I really like Canon. The red rings are really pretty.
Yeah, I switched over to Canon. I originally started on Nikons, and I shot through the consumer models up into the prosumer models, and eventually I started shooting Canon because my wife shoots Canon, and I was looking at just examining, comparing, contrasting photos, and I felt like the Canon has a little warmer look to it, so
Yeah,
I switched over to Canon and switched everything over, sold all my Nikon. But there's nothing wrong with Nikon. Some of the best photographers in the world, including some of our friends in the outdoor industry, shoot Nikon, and they're very good cameras. I have never in my life shot a Sony DSLR. I've shot Sony camcorders, so I really can't speak about Sony, but they're definitely a player in the DSLR game now.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I think it was Doug Steinke. He just recently asked me, I think, if I was interested in one of the Sony mirrorless, and I have never tested it out, and I told him kind of the same thing, just like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and I don't have a need yet to experiment with anything new, but that might be a path I might explore at some point, just not sure when.
Sure. Well, I guess that leads us into our first interview. This is our very first guest on the show. Obviously, this is episode 2, so we haven't had time to bring on a guest. But after discussing this with Jess about who we wanted to bring on the show, I was really, really lobbying to bring Shannon Nardi on, because she's been such a huge help for me in my career, and the history that she and her family have in the outdoor television industry is really, really interesting. So without further ado,
we would like to welcome Shannon Nardi. She is the executive producer and editor at Dancing Dog Productions, and she's the owner and operator for the Super Retriever series. So welcome to the show, Shannon.
Good morning.
Hi,
Good
Shannon.
morning.
How are you guys?
Doing well. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
Good. I'm glad
You were a unanimous vote between the two of us to come to be our first guest, because I'm going to try to get through this out without becoming emotional, because you and I have known each other for quite a while, and we met online before online was really developed technologically. True. It was very primitive. And I had run into my living room one morning, about 13 or 14 years ago now, maybe 2002, I believe. It was 2002, I believe. I went in, I turned the television on. I believe, was it on OLN, Outdoor Life Network?
Yep, it sure was.
Okay, so I turned the television on. This was like one of the very few blocks of outdoor television you could catch on Sunday mornings. I turned it on, and this show came on. And it was about a guy and his Labrador, and I was completely enamored with this show called Waterdog TV, and I just thought, oh my goodness, this is the greatest thing since duct tape. And so I went to my computer. Again, this was very primitive, online, message boarding and talk forums. But I searched for Waterdog TV, and it took me forever. But I finally found your website. I came on. I noticed you had a talk forum, so I came on. I was like, yes, I found it. Now all I wanted to do was find out when it was going to air again, because I didn't know that episodic series aired at the same time every week. And so anyhow, through the talk forum, the message board at Waterdog TV, Shannon and I became friends. And then little did I know that this would turn into a lifelong friendship and a professional working relationship as well. Shannon has helped me tremendously. Her whole family is amazingly engaged and embedded in the outdoor television industry. So I think we need to get right into that and start talking about it.
Yeah. Why don't you give us, Shannon, just a quick background of maybe how you got started, and then we can dive a little bit deeper into some different questions we have for you.
Well, I was very fortunate to be born into it. So my father, who at my age of 6 years old, kind of started a weekly fishing report from the local lake that he was a manager of the boat dock there. And so he did a weekly report, which turned into a half-hour show, which then became syndicated. This is over a few years. And that show was called The Fishing Hole with Jerry McInnes. So that show aired for a while, syndicated, and he actually was fishing up in the Northeast and kind of ran across the ESPN network, which I don't think it was actually called that then, but it was the ESPN network. He took the outdoor.
Was he? Let me stop you for a second.
Yeah.
Was he in a hotel? If I remember this correctly. Okay, he was in a hotel
watching scores.
Okay. And this was so he was watching television. As I recall the story, he was watching an all sports network, and it was like, what is this?
Yes. And my dad's an avid sportsman, baseball especially, but was really enamored that he could actually find out live scores from all over the country, and couldn't wait to get back from fishing so he could find out what the scores were. But he initially took the his show and kind of worked with the producers there, and they developed the outdoor block on ESPN and ESPN2. So he was kind of an innovator in the outdoor television block.
It's like pioneering the way for everything else to come, really.
Yes, absolutely. So I went to work for him in 1996, and actually my very first job was to sit and watch the block. And make sure that all the shows that were sent into our production company were, met the standards of ESPN. What, they had certain things you could and couldn't do. And you had to watch every show and make sure that everybody was, okay there. And we put that whole block together with, little features in between each show with Tommy Sanders and that was my job. The first editing thing I did was People, Places, Things, and Animals on ESPN, and I did it on the Galapagos
awesome.
turtles.
Wow, that's even something I don't recall ever having talked about.
That was my
Shannon.
first feature. It was a 2-minute feature, and it took me like 2 weeks to do, and I was a nervous wreck.
Wow. Wow, that's very interesting. That's something I hadn't heard. And the Galapagos opens my eyes because that's on my bucket list.
Well, I can tell you about some turtles.
So then, some of the people that Shannon's talking about, just so the viewers know, I mean, her dad is Jerry McInnes. And for those of you that don't know or realize this because you're either too young to remember or just weren't into outdoor television at the time, I mean, I really consider him, and I think most people would that know who he is and what he's done for the outdoor television industry, is to really coin him as the father of outdoor television. He started this, he was doing it way before everybody else was. And when he was watching this program in the hotel room, I always get this image in my head about like him like laying in his bed with his his shoes off and he's kicked back on his pillows watching television, and then I see him sitting up and I see these wheels turning in his head going, oh my goodness, this is an all sports television network called ESPN. I'm going to go find them. I'm going to track them down. I'm going to hunt them down, and I'm going to propose this outdoor block on their network and get this thing going. I can just see it all happening because everything he's done has sort of been in that same process,
yes,
right?
It has. Yeah. We, as years went on, that company, my brother Mike actually is the president of that company now, but we've produced so many shows out of that company,
Amazing.
It really is. I mean, there's so many that are just even short-lived shows. I mean, there's just been really a lot of them.
Let's talk about some of the, there's some shows that really are legendary that came out of, again, so everyone knows, the company that Jerry owned is JM Associates, Jerry McInnes Associates, and JM is the company that produces Bassmaster. What else? I mean, these are
right
legendary
now,
shows.
Bassmasters and the Elite Series and the Classic and everything that has to do with Bassmasters. They also produce all the Steel Timber Sports episodes, college and the regular series. They've done a lot of kind of new things in the last few years. They've done the steel boat races and the steel air races. And those have been kind of fun to watch. In the past, gosh, I mean, there's so many like half-hour fishing programs that they've done.
Can you think of any particular show at any time that really kind of I don't want to use a cliche term like broke barriers, but really changed the way they did things? Especially, I mean, it was the first time like outdoor television was really getting a spotlight. So,
I mean, JM's been in existence since like I was a little girl, really, and as far as being in my dad's head. My dad was really big into film. My dad used film for years, so changing over to video was a huge change.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about that before.
And he actually kind of boycotted it for a long time. He did not want to go off the film, And I remember as a little girl, like you go into his office and there was just strips of film like hanging from this shelf he built, and he would literally splice those pieces together and build a show. I mean, he actually was the producer editor of his own show as well. And he did camera work too, I think. It's crazy when you think about all of it, but
when did you start? One of the shows that I want to mention, because I think it's something that maybe not everyone, particularly the younger generation that may be watching, but we have to talk about Jose Wejebe and the Spanish Fly, because that really.
Yeah, and that was my very first real, like, kind of job. That was like the first thing that I really worked on a week-to-week basis. My brother was the executive producer. He had produced a couple of those shows for the ESPN 2 block. At that point, they were just doing little segments on the outdoors, little, 5 and 6 minute segments. Well, that became like a whole nother block of shows we had to do, so it became a half-hour show. And he actually taught me. Like I have to give Mike most of the credit because Mike usually pretty much taught me how to edit and the things to look for and to make it right. So Spanish Fly was my real first job, and I worked on that for 6 years, very closely with Jose. I would talk to him on the phone several times if he didn't like a piece of music I was using, or if he didn't like something I did. We'd talk about it. But it was I loved that show because it was he was a great talent.
Unbelievable talent.
Yeah, he was a great talent.
I think you and I talked about this early on. My way of describing him was he was a poet. Like he could bring romance to fishing, and the beauty behind it was he could tell the story. Yeah. And one of the things that I really wanted to touch on with you is how you've mastered telling a story. I remember when we were, way back when on Waterdog, and you came out to Colorado for your Western tour, and which is when you shot the episode with me and Tanner. You had gone out to Sterling, Colorado to do a show on Doug Bacon. Yep. And this is what really clicked with me and you, Shannon. You went out there, you hiked however far it was. He was carrying all the decoys on his back. You took the camera crew. Justin Tackett was your show host, who's an extremely talented host himself. And you went out there and you didn't see anything. Like I remember hearing maybe you saw 1 or 2 or 3 ducks like in 2 or 3 days.
I think
so you two, and you really had nothing. You had nothing there. You had no content, but you pulled a show out of it because you turned this whole thing into a story about a guy that loved to duck hunt and loved his dog so much that he would walk the extra mile crossing fences with his decoys, and it made this really interesting story. You never saw a duck, and that's when I knew you knew how to tell a story.
If you, as a producer, I never tried to format a show, and I still don't. I can't. You can't predict what's going to happen. You kind of have a general idea. Yeah, we're going to go duck hunting. We're going to shoot some ducks. We're going to tell a story about our guest and his dog, and you can kind of have that general approach in your head. But you got to look at what's happening around you and what the story is. I met Doug Bacon at the Waterdog Firewater Days, and where a bunch of you guys came together and brought your dog, and we had 3 different groups of levels of their dog, and his dog was, medium level. She wasn't like a real high drive dog. She was kind of mellow, but he loved that dog. He really just loved her. And in Sterling, Colorado, at that time, and I don't know if it's different or if I just don't know well, but there wasn't a lot of ducks in Sterling, Colorado. It's not like being in Arkansas or the flyways of Mississippi or whatever. But, we hiked in about 2 miles with all our gear set up, and we literally saw 2 ducks. That she retrieved one, and I think Yella got the other one. But there was such a story to me about, the whole prep that he did just to take her on a hunt that he maybe would see a bird. I really think it was more him just wanting to hang out with his dog,
I think that there's so many technical aspects of your job and what goes into producing, but unless you have that innate sense on how to find the meaning behind things and how to find the story and dig deeper into just like some mundane activity, you really, like Jake does this all the time too. His whole theme is to find the story in things. So do you have
Yes, you taught me that.
Yeah. Do you have any particular method to the madness, or is it just something that
honestly,
you've always been able to dig out yourself?
I think I was kind of born into it, really. I think that's just how I think. I'm always real inquisitive about everything around me and people around me and what, their story, what's their story. But I also feel like, working at JM and working with that crew of people, that was our job, was to tell that story. And that's, if you go back and watch my dad's show, and I really didn't put that together till later on in my life, that if I go back and watch my dad's shows, that's how his shows are, and that's why I'm like that, because that's what I watched and that's just what I was taught, so I don't really know any other way to do that. But I think it's interesting. I think it's more interesting to people to know that. And sometimes I think they don't even know they like that. I think the audience sometimes doesn't realize why they even like a show. But I can tell you it's because it's a story behind it.
When you're working with different people in the field and other cameramen and people that you're producing these shows with, do you find that more people in the industry have that kind of innate ability to tell a story, or are more people focused on the technical side behind things? And
I think more people are focused on the technical side. I think right now, right in the last few years, I think there's a lot of storytelling now, and I'm glad to see that. But I think it's taken a long time to get there. I mean, I see that more now.
It's funny you bring that up too, because like you said, over the last 2 years, really even the last year, more prominently, these stories are coming out, and I've often chuckled. Yeah, and I've often chuckled at it because it's something that you taught me from day one. I mean, going back 13 or 14 years, it's always about the story. And so it's kind of funny how, like you said, it's taken so long for the industry to really connect to that and start doing this in a professional manner. Yeah.
And that's why I really think Waterdog was so popular, because I think men have a real strong bond, and women too, but the majority of men that duck hunt with their dog, I think they have a real strong bond with their dog. And I think that the Waterdog show, where we capture the bond between the guy and his dog, Justin and Yella, and following them through, their weekly adventures, I think it made that guy sitting on the couch with his dog watching it just become more closer to his dog, and he felt that same connection with his dog.
Exactly.
I think that just following those guys through their adventure, and not so much of why you're there, which was, to hunt ducks and shoot ducks or whatever. I think that was like secondary. I always thought secondary.
Well, you turned each episode was a story, but the entire series, all 13 shows combined, was a story in itself, because every episode, it was episodic. So, and every episode was about Justin Tackett and Yella.
Yeah.
But every episode was a different adventure. It was marvelous. It was one of the best shows that I can ever remember on outdoor television. It was great.
Shannon, I feel like somehow I've benefited from all of the lessons that you may have taught Jake, because I feel like every time that we talk about like planning a project or going somewhere or talking about a video, there's just so many repetitive things that he says about let it happen, let it flow, find meanings and things. And like sometimes I feel like when we're planning the project, I'm immediately drawn to that. Okay, well, this is what we're going for. This is what we're here to do. Let me make sure I write down each of these things. And I'm so thankful that Jake is there sometimes to like reel me down a little bit and be like, you're there to capture what happens and tell the story of how it happened. And all those minute little pieces in between are really the meat of everything. And he credits so much of that to you. He talks about you constantly when we're working on these projects. So, I mean, that's just a testament to like how great a job you've done in your experiences.
Thank you. It's fun. I mean, I like what I do. I cannot complain at all. I've been very fortunate to be born into the family I was born in, and just to have the experience that I've gotten from everybody in it.
Well, it definitely shows through in everything that you're about, and that I've been told that you're about. So it's great to hear.
I think one of, something that's very important to me that I'll take to my grave, Shannon, is, how you embraced me. I remember showing up to Firewater in South Dakota, and I was so proud because I had my brand new Pelican case with my first real, broadcast video camera, and I rolled it up the stairs, and it was brand new. I mean, probably still had the tags on it. And I just wanted to show you how proud I was of my camera, because I'm like, I'm getting into this industry, and magically what you brought to me, this is where I'm going to start getting emotional. Magically, what you brought to me was you embraced that. A lot of people would have said, oh, there's a rookie. We're not going to even touch this guy because he doesn't know what he's doing yet. You embraced me, and you brought me into your world. You gave me opportunity after opportunity. I worked for Bassmaster. I've worked for Saltwater Experience, which is, your brother edits and produces that show, and Bassmaster with your dad and your brother. I mean, I owe you so much credit for all the storytelling, all that stuff, and you're a very, very important person to me, and I want the entire outdoor world to understand how important you are to the entire outdoor world.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
What do you when you look for a camera guy, when you're producing a show and you have to go out and hire someone to field produce your show, what do you look for?
Well, it depends on what show. If I'm working on Into the Blue, my first question is, do you get seasick?
There you go. And then beyond that, what do you look for?
Well, I look for a guy who understands the camera, and you know, I think that's what I saw in you, is that you obviously understood a camera before you picked up a video camera, or you were a still camera guy. You understood what to shoot, and you understood a picture, the pictures, and that's what we are looking for, is the best pictures, and you not only do you have to understand how to tell a story with your camera. You have to be able to tell a story without a producer and without another camera guy. You got to pretend like you're by yourself and telling a story through pictures. You got to, and if you can do that, and then understand the technical side, which is something I don't understand at all. So you have to know how to fix your camera if you're out, 100 miles offshore, and know what's wrong and how to fix it. And you just have to know that. You have to know a lot of things. You got to know audio. You just got to know everything. So when I'm looking for somebody pretty much with experience, and I'm always ready to take inexperience in, as a secondary camera, or a third guy that just want to learn and be around somebody who does know. I think that's real important to teach them right. So I'm real open to doing that all the time, because I do like working with young kids, and just like Steve Taylor kids, the SAU Tech kids. I love when they come and work with us, because it's
your Facebook page is going to start blowing up now.
Yeah.
All these young guys are going to be like, "Hey,
applications.
so you told me you would hire me on television, and I have it on tape."
Well, I mean, it's important to learn about, what cameras are about, and that's what a cameraman is. He wants to do that for a living,
Exactly. What about talent? Let's talk about two things.
Tell people about. I have like probably 5 people. I can count my 5. I mean, and I haven't worked with everybody, but I have 5 favorite talents, that I thought were exceptional, because they were knowledgeable in whatever genre they were in, and they were good on camera. And that's hard to find. People don't understand how hard that is to find. I think the best talent in the world is Tommy Sanders. I mean,
it's hard to argue that one.
You have to be around him for years and work with him to know how exceptional he is. But he's an exceptional talent. As far as like show hosts, I think my dad is exceptional. He's great on camera. He could tell the story, and he knew everything he taught about fishing. I think Justin was an exceptional talent. Jose. I have a couple more. I work with Steve and Scott now, Steve Roger and Scott Walker, and I love those guys. It's like working with the odd couple.
It is.
And I've always said that because, Scott's so pristine and perfect, and everything has to be in order. And Steve is just, wild man that comes on. But they're great because they know so much about their industry. Steve is hilarious. Scott loves that he's hilarious. And so it just works, and that makes a great team. And so I really enjoy working on that right now.
I think that's important to point out when you're working with two guys as talent. They're almost polar opposites, but that complements each other, and that fills in the gaps between the two people, so they're not both the same person.
Well, when I first started working with them, I was thinking, oh man, this is going to be interesting. I'm not sure if this is going to work. Because there was just some times, but the more we got going, it just seemed like, Steve would just say some crazy funny things, and where I thought Scott might be like, he would just die laughing. He just worked. So it's a lot of fun with those two right now.
Don't you think there's when you build a show with talent, with on-camera talent, don't you think like the whole crew has to get in sync with each other, and it takes a little while to develop that, but it turns into a relationship. Like, I love going down to Florida to shoot Into the Blue because it's not just a job. I get to go down and see all my friends. We're a team. We all work together.
Send me pictures of all the good seafood you're eating the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
that too.
Especially on a saltwater shoot like that. I mean, that's a hard shoot. It's really hard. It's hard on the whole crew, especially if you got high seas and all that kind of thing. It's a hard thing to deal with, and the camera guys especially, because you're not only just trying to shoot what's happening, you are at the mercy of the boat driver who has to know what he's doing. And we have a great guy that's the boat driver, underwater camera guy at the same time. We share that responsibility.
There's no ego.
It's like a choreographed ballet on the boat because you got to be able to move and get around when the boat's turning, and it's really a show in itself. It'd really be kind of a good show to
do behind the scenes.
Cover the camera guys' work,
Do you have any innovative or unique ways, like say you're filming the show and it's just not coming together, the talent's stalling out, it's just not going the way you need it to go? Is there anything you kind of do to like redirect the situation immediately?
Yeah, like if the guys have been fishing all day and they're not catching anything or whatever, and they finally get one on, but they're not like excited about it, or they're excited but they're not talking, you got to kind of bump them a little bit, like, hey, you just kind of say hey, and they'll, I gotta start talking about this, but there's always something. I mean, like I don't know how to explain that, but there's always something. There's something, whether it's the turtle that swims by. It's like I'm always telling the camera guys to cover everything they see. It's almost like don't put your camera down. And Jake can attest for that. It's like the cameras don't really go down. They're up because you can't predict, especially in the ocean. If it happens fast, and then if you miss it, you miss it.
Well, that was one of the things that I took over to Bassmaster, learning from you.
Yeah.
And I remember you telling me stories about, your dad being very adamant. If you turn your camera off, you are going to be terminated. And so I go into bass, like my first bass event, I'm holding my camera. I'm standing there like the Statue of Liberty for 8 or 9 hours, whatever it was on the water. Because I'm thinking in the back of my head, I'm going, Shannon said, if I turn my camera off, I'm going to get fired. So it's very, and through experience, having done this for years, decades now, I find that if I turn my camera off, I do, but I know what to look for more now through experience. But there are times when you miss something really important and you just kick yourself in the butt because you're going, oh my God, I just turned my camera off and then a great white breached, or something silly like that.
Like I'm always, I'm a big fan of dolphin, and they all know it. The whole crew kind of knows that. And so I'm like, if I see one, but I'm like, there's dolphin over there. Let's shoot those, because it's a great cutaway if I need it too. Just dolphin in the ocean. They're just a great thing to look at. People love them, and so yeah, there's always a story happening. Whether like for instance on Into the Blue, one of my favorite places to go, and it's like crazy, and they make fun of me probably, but we go get these bait at this little floating island. It's kind of like a bunch of salty dog people out there, but there's this little.
It's like a pirate. It's like a pirate.
It's like a giant pallet.
Yeah, it's like pirates on a pallet.
Yeah, and they get the bait there, but there's like 3 or 4 dogs that live on this thing too. So they start barking the minute you pull up, and they're kind of the guard dogs of this little pallet,
We should do a story about them.
But I love that. I'm always looking at that and going, man, that's some, those guys are kind of, just salty dog, crusty guys, and their dogs are there and they're bait fishing to sell it to the fishermen.
It's the dogs again. The dogs really make all shows. If there's a dog, you've got a show.
Exactly. But I mean, there's got to be a story right there on that pallet. You know what I mean? There's a complete episode right there.
We should break now because I've got a few more questions for Shannon, and I know Jess does too. We're going to get to the tip of the day, so are we going to click Shannon off?
I think we can keep her on.
Okay.
I'm afraid if I click her off, she might not come back.
Yeah, we're afraid of the technical difficulties that may arise. So, Yeah, let's get into the tip of the day. We're over halfway through the show, so it's time. Today we're going to talk about lens and camera care. One of the things is we're talking about these saltwater shoots and even shoots, in isolated areas or wherever it can get really dusty. So one of the problems that we foresee as camera guys all the time is dust, salt, or rain, or water, or whatever it is. So what I wanted to talk about today was how I clean my camera on a daily basis, particularly field cleaning, or when I get back to my room at a hotel, what I do to clean everything off. So what I do is I take my camera and lens.
Do you have any tips that apply to cleaning mushed banana off your lens? Because that happened to me this weekend.
Lick it off. If you get food on your camera, just lick it off. But what I like to do is take a wet rag, a small hand cloth, put fresh water on it, wring it out as tight as I can so it's just damp, and then I literally wipe everything down. I use fresh water, A, to get the dust off, and B, to get the salt water off, because salt water, even salt in the air, causes corrosion. And the other thing I like to do is when I take the lens cap off, if it's dusty, I see people taking a lens wipe and wiping the camera lens, the front element, dry. What I like to do is breathe on it, take my cloth, and then wipe it in a circular motion, starting from the middle, working my way out so it drives all that dust to the outside, and then one last swipe, and it cleans your lens off. And the moisture, if you breathe on it and you get a little, you develop the fog on the lens and wipe it off, that's the moisture acts as a lubricant. So if you have little bitty tiny micro grains of sand or dust that could scratch your lens, the moisture from your breath acts as a lubricant to prevent you from scratching it. And as we all know, when you start getting into, premium lenses, these things are $2,000 a piece. The last thing you want to do is scratch your front element. So that's my tip of the day. What do you do, Jess?
Typically the same kind of things. Like I said in the first episode, I keep filters on all of my lenses. So there's already a little bit of there's a protection barrier there. I try to keep the lens caps on as much as I can when I'm traveling. Unfortunately, like when you're in the woods or something like that and you've got to move really quick, sometimes I'm just jamming stuff in the bag really quick. So dust is a major factor for me. I used to keep a little, it almost looks like a tiny, like a bottle brush, a little bit like a soft bottle brush, and that I used to like wipe off around the contacts of my lens to the body before I would change lenses, so that when I would change the lens, no debris or anything like that would fall in either in the body or in the first eyepiece of the lens. But other than that, I keep some Zeiss wipes around. Obviously, like you said, you don't want to use them on your lens before you cleaned off the bulk of the debris, or you're just going to be scratching it. But those work really good for the anti-fog, especially if you're traveling from like a vehicle and then you're going outside. The difference in temperature sometimes can really stall being able to use your camera as you wait for condensation and things to equal out. So the Zeiss wipes I keep on handy all the time. And I have cold. And I try to keep a little bit of a brush with me, and there's always one in my Pelican case. But I'm not always carrying that, because sometimes it's just like throw the stuff in the backpack and get on the move.
So there you have it. That's your tip of the day. We're talking about keeping your lens and your camera clean. It's very important because dust, water, and salt are the worst three enemies of your
bananas.
Bananas. Yeah, bananas. So Shannon, we're going to get back to maybe the last few questions here. Yep. Some of them are going to be technical maybe, and some are going to be hopefully not too emotional, but we're going to, we're going to get into some interesting things. What's been your, go ahead.
What is your bucket list, most ultimate job? Like, what is a show you would love to produce, or something you'd love to film that you just haven't had an opportunity to do yet?
Man, that's a tough one, because I feel like I did it. I really feel like
even better.
I really feel like I have. Like, I feel like all the Waterdog episodes and all the places we went with that crew I mean, I can't beat that, you know. I mean, I can't beat that. And I said that when we were done. I was like, I don't think I'll ever do anything like this again, you know. And then that's okay, because I'm real happy that I got that opportunity, you know. Like, I mean, I feel like there's so many people that would love to go to Maine and shoot sea ducks, you know, and just that whole experience. And that was like a story overload. We couldn't even get into so much of the stuff that was happening there. You know, just the seals on the rocks and the eiders and how beautiful those were, and the dog work and the tide and just everything around that. You know, so you know, that was one of my favorite things I've ever done, was that particular shoot.
And interestingly enough, there's a lot of that going around. You know, you see Benelli print ads and videos. The Sitka team went up there and did some, or they went, you know, there's more of that now. And again, sometimes I chuckle at it. Not that there's anything wrong with what they're doing now, because they may or may not have seen what you did, you know, 10 or 12 years ago, but history repeats itself. It was interesting then, and it's coming back as a trendy thing now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah. And, you know, and for me, the whole Waterdog, all the stuff that I got involved with, you know, the way I got even involved with all that was that I got, you know, with the Great Outdoor Games, when we got started producing that, like JM was a big part of that whole deal and developing the Great Outdoor Games with ESPN. And I literally got stuck in a venue that I was not happy about. I was, you know, I got stuck in venue F, which was 2 and 3 miles away from the Circle Arena. It was in Lake Placid, so everybody was in the circle where they had the ice skating, and the Olympics were in that circle. And so you had steel timber sports there, you had the Bass Weigh in there, you had agility dogs, and Big Air was across at Mirror Lake, and you know, then you had shooting sports and archery, and then way down here you got retriever trials in venue F, which I had no idea what that was, you know. I mean, and I remember meeting with Justin where he explained to me kind of what a trial was. I think about that now, about being explained how a retriever trial works, and there's so many variables. I'm still learning that, you know. It's just not something you learn in a day. But I got stuck with the producer there, who ended up being a very big mentor of mine. I was scared to death of him, but his name was Bill Fitz, and he was the producer that produced the very first 6 Super Bowls, and a number of other things. And he was very hard, but he was very good, and I learned a lot from him. But as I sat there on that very first job, away from all my colleagues, I was with the whole staff of ESPN. I was scared, you know, and sitting there and watching that first dog run out at 300 yards and turn back around on a whistle and take direction, it blew me away. And I was immediately hooked to that, just, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. So I was fortunate to produce that for 5 years with Great Outdoor Games, where they then decided they wanted to do some qualifiers to air prior to the games. And so I got the opportunity to produce that. And we were kind of the guinea pig to try some new things and production things with the dogs, so that we could use it at the Great Outdoor Games at the ESPN. So I learned a lot during that process, you know, and I'll just continue the story, because when the Great Outdoor Games quit doing Great Outdoor Games, ESPN kind of cut that out and quit kind of doing outdoors and got into soccer or whatever. We had this Super Retriever Series, which was an organization that was healthy, and you couldn't just say, okay, we're going to quit. We had a whole group of guys that participated. We have events, and so we just continued that on. And that's kind of when I broke off with JM, because JM was pretty married to ESPN at that time, and I took that entity and went to Outdoor Life Network with it. And then it just you know, stayed with me. So I love the sport, and I always love the sport. I love watching the dog work. I think it's my favorite thing to do. I don't get to do it a lot, even though I'm there all the time. I'm working, but I do like every once in a while just to sit in a lawn chair and watch dog work, because I just think it's amazing. They're like athletes, and they got their own personality, and they're all different, and it's just so fun to watch dogs work, you know.
It's one of my favorite things to cover too, as well, Shannon. I really appreciate you pulling me in to the SRS, and we should talk about that briefly. We're kind of running out of time, but we got a few more minutes. But you know, for those of you that don't know, Shannon is the owner and operator, like Jess mentioned early on, of the Super Retriever Series, and this is a hybridized sport between the hunt tests and field trials. So these dog handlers and trainers that bring the dogs to her event have trained these unbelievably talented retrievers to play both games. So one series may be a simulated hunt test, true hunt test, and then the next test would be a simulated field trial test. And both, being able to do both is like Bo Jackson, play baseball and football in the same game. So, it's hard not to. I know a lot of people, it could be debated or whatever, but in my opinion, those are the best retrievers in the world because they can play both games.
Yes, I have to agree with that. They're the best. They're the best well-rounded retrievers.
Right, and so Shannon, when she covers the Crown Championship, which is the SRS's version of the Super Bowl, she covers it like you would any sporting event, like a live college football game or the Super Bowl or whatever it is. She's in a production trailer. She's got a team in there. We've got multiple cameras out there shooting. She's on a switchboard calling the switches from camera A to camera B to camera C to camera D and all that stuff. So that's where I learned how to shoot ultimately live sporting events, which transcended my experience and knowledge into things like Bassmaster and anything else that might be live. Even this show, we're doing this, and this all came from the knowledge that I learned at the SRS. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
I'm still figuring out all the switchy buttons.
Well, Shannon, you've been an inspiration to me. So many people. You're just a kind heart. You're just a wonderful person. We really appreciate you being on the show. We appreciate everything you've done for outdoor television. Is there anything that you'd like to say in your final thoughts?
Oh no. You should have prepped me for that one.
Well, let me ask you this. Who would you like to thank? Who's been your your mentors?
I have to thank, there's so many people. It's like everybody I work with, you actually have to learn from the people you work with too, even the young guys that don't really know, you learn from them. I've learned a lot from all my talent, all of them. You have to be able to relate and to talk with your talent to get, kind of what you want out of them. I've had so many times where, my talent.
Here's a quick.
Like, what are you trying to ask me? I have a hard time trying to ask them to say something because I want it to be so natural. I want them just to really speak how they feel and not have somebody question them. I like a natural feel, and I'm real,
organic. Yeah,
I'm real kind of snippety about that. I really like the organic, natural feel about everything. I don't want to plan anything. I don't want to set up anything. It just has to happen. If we get it, we get it. If we don't, we're not going to recreate it. I'm just not that. But
I think we have a couple, maybe a minute here to answer a question from somebody for you.
Yeah.
So Gary Wilson wants to know if you have any recommendations for a promoter that just booked 6 North American diving dog events with an outdoor film festival and with Bass Pro Shop. Is there small scale events with AKC that could be incorporated into a parking lot during? I don't know what he's saying.
Probably. Yeah, he's Gary Wilson. He's the owner and operator of the Outdoor Film Festival, and he's incorporating into an event with Bass Pro Shops, and apparently he's booked 6 events with American diving dogs. So he's asking what they could do adjacent to that in a parking lot scenario that might make his event more interesting and just have more bulk to it.
Well, if he's got a dock dumping event, and I'm real familiar with 8 American diving dogs. I'm familiar with that guy. You don't have to really incorporate much in with that. If you got a bunch of dogs that are jumping, that's to me. That it doesn't matter what else you do, and you well know this, Jake. If there's dogs on the dock and they're jumping, I don't care if they're big time dogs or little dogs. If something else is going on over here, the crowd's still going to be around that dock because they want to see what that dog's going to do off that dock. So you can have something else, but if you do, you better cut the dock down while that's going on, because
Right.
if the dogs are on the dock, that's where the crowd will be.
Yeah, you could make Michael Jordan feel inferior out there.
Exactly. That's true. You probably-
Everybody loves dogs.
Everybody loves.
And when they hit the water, all the kids like to gather around the
like
pool
splash.
because
And here's the thing. What's always amazing to me, you may have a dog that doesn't know how to jump, and they're teaching it to jump, and they're encouraging them to jump, and everybody's rooting for them to jump. It'll build the biggest crowd just to watch a dog jump 2 feet off that dock. It's amazing to me how people.
Yeah, so anytime you hear the name Super Retriever Series, the Superfly, which is their dock event,
Yep.
This is something that I'd love to see grow even more. You guys have just been officially sanctioned by the UKC titles, which is a really important thing. Can you
we just partnered with the United Kennel Club, so that all of our titles now at SRS and all of the past titles are going to be grandfathered in. So these titles will now be on the dog's pedigree. So they'll have an SRS title, the ones that get the points and stuff to get that done. And you can find out all about that on our website and stuff. And we've also just partnered with Eukanuba. We're probably going to televise the Crown Championship this fall for, I think we're talking to Discovery right now to televise that for, it'll re-air in spring time. So we're really excited about that. We're excited about the growth we have right now.
It's awesome. Well, thank you so much for spending your morning with us, Shannon.
Absolutely.
A lot of fun. Hopefully we can have you back sometime.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shannon, so much for being on the show, and
You're welcome.
I was really looking forward to this. And thank you for everything.
Thank you
so much.
So we're going to say goodbye, Shannon.
Bye.
Have a great day, Shannon.
So, episode 2 is wrapping up. Do you have any final thoughts, Jake? Any final words?
I have a product. You mean about Shannon, or should we do the product snapshot real quick?
Let's do the product snapshot. Let's get into it.
Let's do it. So I have found a new product called Curved Camera. It's you can go to their website called curvedcamera.com, and it's spelled KUVRD camera.com. Okay, this is their logo if you see it. And what it is it's a rubber camera lens. And I used it for the very first time. I bought 8 of these things. And I used it for the very first time this past weekend on this turkey hunting assignment that I was on. And they're very, very handy. So here it is. I don't know if you can see this or not, but it's a rubber. It's a stretchy. It's literally rubber. It's very soft and flexible, so this thing will fit around most any lens. It obviously won't fit around the front element of a 600 or a 500 or 300 millimeter prime, but like this 50 millimeter prime here, instead of losing your lens cap all the time, you bump it against something, or you've got it over your shoulder and you bump it and the lens cap pops off and you lose it and you don't have the protection anymore. This thing literally folds over. Yeah, I wish I had it mounted, but you literally just drape it over like a sock, and it's protective. And if you look at the promo video on their website, you can see if you put one on one end and one over the other, you could literally throw this in the water. Not that I would ever do that, but you could literally throw it in the water and it would be protected 100% from the water. It's rubber, so it's got a it's protective from the bounce. If you dropped it on the ground, there's some protection there. These things, they're a little bit expensive. I think you can buy 4 of them for $100, but I found it to be worth it because of all the dusty places, and as hard as I am on my cameras, and I know you are too, Jess. You're very
I'm looking forward to checking these out because, no matter how long you keep lens caps on, eventually even the dust is going to get in those little grooves on the inside, and that just transfers right to your lens. So this is pretty innovative, and I'm pretty interested to see. I haven't tested it yet, but Jake's got a whole bunch, so I'm going to say it to you.
Yeah, you got a couple coming your way.
Nice.
So there you go. There you have it. The product snapshot of the day is the coveredcamera.com universal lens cap. So go to their website, check it out, and I think you'll really like these things.
So one more thing before we sign off. If anybody wants to sport one of these, we've got some Outdoor Cameraman Experience stickers. They've got some pretty neat little effect on them. They'll stick to your whatever you want, your coolers, your boxes, your gear boxes, your Pelican cases. So if anybody wants one, comment or message us with your address and we will mail you one.
And by the way, that leads me into one last thing. Jess and her husband, Mark, have a company called Stickers That Stick that produces these types of decals that are guaranteed for X amount of years. I bought so many of them for my bar, my media company, and now the Outdoor Cameraman Experience. So if you're looking for decals, go to stickersthatstick.com and place your order today. They're great. They're a great company.
Thanks. Well, I think that about wraps it up for this week. So we will put out a promotion for the next show with the times and what we'll be talking about. So we will see you then.
Thank you, Jess.
Thanks, Jake.
See you, everybody.